Hi, guys. Joining us in conversation today is a teacher of the Doc Phi Wong Choy Li Fut system. He has been part of the Plum Blossom International Federation for over 20 years and continues to spread its teachings across the globe. Situated in Geneva, Switzerland, he's a driving force of Chinese martial arts education, always willing to exchange knowledge to better himself and those around him, is Sifu Brian Kuttel. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me here. This is awesome. You know, like you we were talking about earlier, you were saying this is a, good face to face finally to actually get in touch and actually speak to each other face to face. So I'm excited for this.
That's true. That's true. Let's go ahead and give it a little context for that comment there. Sifu
Sure.
Kuttel and I have been connected on social media for a very long time now, and it's only now that we're actually getting to have a face-to-face conversation. So, no, it's absolutely awesome. Thank you very much for your time today, Sifu. So let's not go ahead and waste it because I know you're like 6 hours ahead of me.
Yes,
So
sir.
I know you probably want to go to your bed right now. So let's go ahead and get straight into the interview. All right. So how do you start the martial arts, Sifu Kuttel?
Well, it's not the most exciting story, to be honest. It was kind of the origin story of many people. I was a teenager and I watched some Bruce Lee movies and I just fell in love with the art and I wanted to learn only Kung Fu. And it was something that there was a limited amount of martial arts in the town that I grew up in. It was karate and taekwondo. And in my mind, I had my mind and my heart set on Kung Fu. So I had to kind of ask around with some friends, and they introduced me to a Kung Fu school that was in a nearby city. And from that point on, I looked them up, checked them out. They were like 40 miles away from me, and I called them up, scheduled my first lesson, took the lesson, didn't even really know style to style what was different during that time, and I didn't even know the actual style. I just knew it was a kung fu school, and I was super excited about that. And the class was awesome. My very first lesson, the instructor was very attentive. I learned some movements. I felt really comfortable in being in the school. I met the Sifu, and it met all of those things that kind of matched what I had seen in kung fu movies. You know, there's the weapons, the wooden dummy, and I was like, this is awesome. This is the place, and it kind of went from there. And I eventually I ended up learning that the style was Choy Li Fut, and it was just something that I really loved. It was an art that pushed me, yeah, physically, mentally, and I was just surrounded by a lot of positive people. So it really helped me grow, especially during my teenage years, and it was something that hooked me for my life. It's I've been doing it for most of my life at this point, which is kind of crazy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you have so it's been Choy Li Fut the whole time.
So I did do a little bit, like so I also do Tai Chi. So in the lineage that I do from Grandmaster Doc Phi Wong, he teaches Choy Li Fut and Tai Chi, Yang style Tai Chi. So after my first year of training Choy Li Fut, I started doing the Tai Chi classes as well, and just more to be at the school more often. And then as I started teaching and helping out, it became more of an important part for me. And so Tai Chi as well for about the same amount of time. And then otherwise, I did train for a couple of months with one of my friends. We wanted to do some MMA training, so we got into a little bit of that. But it was really on and off for a couple of months, and it was great. It was a great experience, but I wouldn't say that I have a good knowledge base in that. And really, other than that, now that I think of it, when I was growing up, I did a style of wrestling, actually Swiss wrestling, because my heritage is Swiss. And even though I grew up in the United States, a part of the Swiss community was to do, every summer, my cousins and I would go train, and there were a couple of tournaments around California where we would do the Swiss style of wrestling. And it's really unusual looking. If you look it up, You know, you wear, like, it's in a sawdust ring, but they don't have mats. You wear like a pair of burlap shorts over your pants, and then you have to have grips on the burlap shorts. So it kind of looks weird, but at the same time, it was a great foundation for understanding hip positioning and leverage, as well as controlling the center of gravity of the body. So it was actually really helpful in my entire martial arts experience as well. But I stopped doing that long ago because once you turn 18, there's no weight classes. You just wrestle everybody 18 and above. And I was 165 at 18, and I was wrestling guys that were, over, 240, 250. So it was a good time to retire.
So you have experience in Swiss style wrestling, Yang style Tai Chi, as well as Choy Li Fut Kung Fu. Mm-hmm. That is awesome. Most of my guests and mostly everybody in my martial arts circle, when they started out, they jumped around from martial art to martial art until they felt something, something cohesive. They felt something that they could connect with in a certain specific martial art, and then they stuck with that. But you found Choy Li Fut and stayed with Choy Li Fut. Not many people are lucky enough to have that kind of situation happen.
Yeah, that's true. Awesome. And I mean, that's pure, for me, it was pure luck. Like, it was just happened to be the school that I stepped into. Had I really wanted to look for a particular style, and had there been many schools around, I probably would have tried to go for like Jeet Kune Do or Wing Chun first, because that was what Bruce Lee did. And, he was kind of the gateway there. But I was watching lots of Kung Fu movies at the time too. And I was really interested in the different styles, like using different weapons and doing animal styles and drunken style and Buddha palm. And when I started doing Choy Li Fut, and the more I learned about the art, I realized that I found that it was all of these things that I was really attracted to in the martial arts was there. And so it was really lucky. I didn't have to go and find a school because, I didn't like the way that we were training here, or it didn't meet my needs. I found it first by chance. It is very lucky.
That's true. So with that said, let's go into our second question there, Sifu Kuttel. Right? And it's a very, very good segue into it. Right? Since you have so much experience and so much time invested with Choy Li Fut, right? I can't think of a better person to answer this. Right? In your honest opinion, what is Choy Li Fut?
So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's an excellent vehicle for many things. We can perpetuate tradition. There's a lot of things that I've learned about Chinese tradition and Chinese culture through the art. And even on the surface level, you get exposed to all of these things, like Guandao, for instance. You learn who General Guan is, and you learn the importance of him and the three kingdoms and all of that. Or you learn like monkey staff, and you kind of pick up a little bit about the Monkey King. And there's parts of the culture that are there. I mean, just paying respects to the past masters, and doing Ginglai and lighting incense at the altar. All these little things are, a way to perpetuate culture. And I think that's really important, but that's more traditional Chinese martial arts in general. To me, Choy Li Fut is an excellent art for developing power generation. And I think that if I had to narrow it down to something, it would be that, because no matter what you're looking at, even if you're trying to just do it at a performance, the art itself is using the entire body, and especially hip positioning and waist rotation, to generate extreme amounts of power. We're not just trying to throw a punch and have all the strength be coming from the arm. We have +1 because we tighten up a little bit, right, as we tense up, right, as we strike, right. That adds a little +1. We turn our waist, that adds like a +3. We use our stance, that's like a +5. Like, all of these things add up to make our punch stronger than average. And I think that's one of the biggest things about Choy Li Fut that really separates it from many, many other arts, is that we have such an emphasis on this from the very beginning. From the beginning of stance work, you learn how to use your body to generate some devastating force.
When you answer it like that, it comes to something comes to mind. Choy Li Fut is one of the most popular Southern Chinese martial arts systems. And when you answer that question, especially in the manner that you just answered it, I can understand why. Right? Of course, you have arts like Choy Li Fut, you have Wing Chun, and then you have other Hakka arts, probably like Southern Praying Mantis or probably even Pak Mei. You know, these are the more popular Southern Chinese martial arts. And Choy Li Fut just seems to be, as you said, just seems outwardly just stronger than everything else. And that would be definitely because of the power generation that you have just mentioned. Very great answer. So we segue into our next one, Sifu Kuttel. Is Choy Li Fut practical for fighting?
Absolutely. And you have to understand practical, you have to kind of split it up into a couple of things, because we always we try to box it into one single thing, and it's whatever comes to our mind is like, usually it's the negative side, right? Oh, that wouldn't work in the street. Oh, that wouldn't work in the ring. Oh, here's a note. Like, we always look at where it wouldn't work, but we have to realize that you have context, which is important, your environment, and how you're going to use the art. Are you going to use it in a sport sense where you're going to have, like, your goal is to figure out your opponent, to wear them down, and then eventually either knock them out or score points on them, something like that, right? Or are you looking to just try to end it as quick as possible in like the street fight kind of situation? And then also beyond context, there's I mean, other like environmental factors in context, but other than that, you have conceptual ways of using the martial art, as well as direct applications. So when we look at direct applications, a punch is a punch, right? I can just punch somebody in the face. That's a direct application. We can see straight into it. When you look at a form and you try to dissect that and understand the application for a form, we're looking at positioning and angling, which is important as well, and using that to gain the most amount of power to throw the punch. But on the conceptual side, it's not easily as seen, because you need a lot more work to, like, especially if you're trying to dissect a form. Is this trying to work to develop us in a way to have more striking from the outside, or trying to move around our opponent, or is it just trying to have direct forward driving force? And those are the things that often, when taught, you either have a teacher that's going to try to focus on one more than the other, and a lot of times the conceptual is just talked about but not put into practice, and then a lot of times the just direct translations or the direct applications are usually boxed into, you can only do it this way every time, you have to step like this, you have to punch only this type of punch. Where Choy Li Fut has like it's got like 1,000 different hand strikes. It's like a Swiss Army knife of kung fu hand positions and kicking. Like, you have so many options that you can't just limit yourself to that. So you have to kind of, I think the best is to is to understand that both are there, and then to explore it a little bit more, because you can substitute like a fist strike for a palm strike, for a finger strike, or even using the same concept, we can apply it through punches, kicks, takedowns, or even joint locks. But it's not something where you can just watch like a quick clip of something and just be like, okay, I got this. This is only going to be this every single time. This is the only way to apply it. And when people understand that you can apply it in contextual, in different contexts, in conceptual, and in just direct, you have way more ways to use this art. And yes, it works.
Very good answer. That is a very good answer. That is a very good answer and a very good explanation, and it's very thorough, because what you say is definitely true. You have these different ways of how you can teach something, and it would be 3 different ways it would be interpreted. I understand this, right? But it's only one way that you're really going to truly get it, and that is through practical application, to actually doing it.
Yeah,
Right?
you got to
Like for
drill it, you
example,
got to spar. It's it. That's what it is. Yeah.
yes, yes, I completely agree with you. Completely agree with you. And this jolted my memory. So with Doc Phi Wong Choy Li Fut, right? I am aware that Doc Phi Wong has has had different Choy Li Fut, has learned different Choy Li Fut branches. Most notably, the Lao Bun Choy Li Fut branch. I think the Jiang Men, which is from Wong Gong, I believe,
Correct. Yes.
and I believe one other. I'm not too sure, but is in his school, right? And from the system that you're from, right? Do they blend the forms together? Is it or do they have separate curriculums for each one?
So the way that it works within the Plum Blossom Federation under Grandmaster Doc Fai Wong is that he wants to he keeps the lineages, like the forms that you're doing in the lineage is true to the lineage. And like the forms that he learned from Lao Bun, we do it the way that he learned it. And the forms that he learned from Wong Gong, as well as the forms that he learned from Hu Yun Cho, are specifically the same way that he learned those forms. And it's there's not really a blend. It's not trying to mix everything together and pick like, oh, I like how the punch is done in this one, and I like how the Chunao is done in this one, and I like how the Pun Q or this block is done in this one. He doesn't want to mix it or standardize it to one single thing. Rather, keep it separate, and that's one thing that can be a frustration for students as they're moving up because it's within the single curriculum. Like you don't choose, I'm going to learn Hong Xing, or I'm going to learn the Lao Bun lineage, or I'm going to learn the Wong Gong lineage. Like you're going to start like from the beginning. It's typically more Jiangmen forms from Wong Gong up until about intermediate level, and then other lineages start getting introduced. And usually it's that first one where you start doing like Gingmui is the lineage where you start doing a little bit more evasive footwork instead of stepping direct in straight lines like you would do the circular step. You learn different versions of doing, like I said, Pun Q. So instead of like finishing the motion like this, you're going to finish the motion with the hand turned with the fingers leading, or it's going to do a slap in some cases. And these things get a little difficult or frustrating for students the first time that they hit it. But at the same time, it's keeping that purity of the lineage. And in the position that I'm in now, because I do remember being frustrated with it. I was like, this move it's a Pun Q is a Pun Q is a Pun Q. It should always be done the same way. Why do I need to do it different? But you understand too that there's also, because of the position of the arm, it changes a little bit, even though the shape of the movement is the same. You have a different end result. So just by turning my fingers in this direction, instead of having the palm lead, I now have a chance to get further underneath and kind of grab on and hold on a little bit more and control my opponent's arm, rather than just having what my palm is touching. And if I want to control it, I have to grab on. So there's some unique things that come about from that in application. But from where I'm at now, it's easy in my mind to think, oh, I'm going to do it this style or that style, right? I do this form because it's from this lineage. I do it this way, and I think it's important to keep it like that. And I really agree with how Grandmaster has chosen to do that, because he could very well have just standardized everything, and we do different forms with the only one lineage's techniques and shapes. And that would just be a disservice to his Sifus, because he was very lucky to not only learn from Lao Bun, but after Lao Bun passed away, he had the opportunity to find other Choy Li Fut Sifus to work with. And it's not really well known, actually, for many, that for him, when he met Wong Gong and he met Hu Yun Cho from different lineages and well known for their Choy Li Fut, he met them at a big banquet. And it was just a big gathering of Choy Li Fut Sifus, and they were all together. It's kind of similar to nowadays when we like go over for like Chen Hong's birthday, and you find a lot of different lineages over there. And he was just trying to network and talk, and he made such a good impression on these two that without him knowing, they talked to them between themselves and decided to accept him as a disciple, which like straight up is unheard of. So, like especially during that time, these are traditional Sifus that, that actually decided that it's okay if I take him on and teach him my Choy Li Fut, and I know this other guy's going to teach him also his Choy Li Fut. So I think it's just it's a really exceptional case, because I don't know, even nowadays I wouldn't expect Choy Li Fut teachers to be like, oh well, you learn from this guy, but you can learn from me at the same time, and not think that that's somehow disrespectful. Like that's a really cool agreement between them and a really exceptional position for him. So, and he wants to keep that respect for them because they were his Sifus. So a little extra on that, but I think it's important to know.
Oh, true. That really does speak credit to Grandmaster Doc Phai Wong's merit. That's true, to be able to have both grandmasters want to teach you and be like, okay, no problem, you can take all of it. That's great. Thank you for that information. So,
he actually didn't. What's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
And to finish that, he didn't even know. They did this kind of, they spoke to each other during that banquet, and then they organized a separate discipleship, the Baisi ceremony for him later on. And they kind of had it was a really unique thing. They had kind of a go around. They had one of his friends invite him over to just have a meal. They said, hey, do you want to come join us for a meal? And he went, and then he had his two Sifus there. And that right on the spot, he was like, oh, I know what's happening. I got to get the red envelope. He asked his friend, do you have a red envelope? And the guy was like, yeah, I got him. You're good to go.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. That's great. So that's great that could happen, because the education that he received, he was able to pass that on to you. So my question to you now, Sifu Kuttel, is that do you teach in that same manner as well, with the beginner level being Jiang Men, the intermediate level being King Moi, and then the advanced level being from
you kind of get a lot of everything at the advanced level, but yeah. Okay. I stick with the same way. I think that no matter what, you're going to find with every teacher, there's bound to be an evolution of the art, and there's bound to be different ways of how it's taught. So whereas the curriculum is the same, the requirements are the same. Now being on my own, I try to prefer to stick to very certain training methods as well at specific levels. So it gives me a chance to give a little bit depth where I think is important in the development of the student altogether. But otherwise, yeah, the forms are always going to be the same from the beginner level to the advanced level.
In your honest opinion, what is the hardest part of developing one's Kung Fu?
I would say, and it's a very simple answer, it's consistency. It's routine. That is the hardest part. There's the old saying, you train a day, gain a day, and you miss a day, you lose a week. And it's something we don't, when I was young, it didn't make that much sense to me, because it's one of those things, like, you're young, you don't feel the physical change that much other than your gains. Like, you feel like a little bit sore, you had a good workout, but you don't really feel how much you kind of lose when you miss a day of training, and how much you regress. So really the hardest thing is to just endure, and to make sure that you keep consistent training. If you're serious about the martial art and you want to have progress, and you want to develop yourself, you want to get further depth in knowledge in the martial art, it takes daily work. You don't have to do a crazy workout. It's not like, I wouldn't consider it the same kind of training schedule as like weightlifting, because you're not going to look at it as like, oh, today I'm going to work on my chest and back, tomorrow I'm going to work on my legs. You're not going to do it that way, because it's all together. So you have to practice your martial art. You have to, you're not going to take a rest day from it. There's going to be some training sessions that are going to be harder than others, but you should always have, make a little bit of time. It doesn't have to be 2 hours, but 10 minutes a day doing your martial art is going to maintain that, so that when you do your good 2-hour session, you build up your progress. And then again, you have your you level it by your 10 minutes a day, and then your next 2 hours, and like that's how you're going to truly progress. It's just keeping consistent, because otherwise you have to relearn your movement, you have to reteach the body, you have to rebuild the muscles, and then that's just you're going to have to, it's just getting you back up to that same level you started at. So yeah, simply put, consistency.
Consistency. That's great. That's great. That's a really good answer right there. And as you're explaining all of this, right? One of my teachers, he literally says, "Just show up."
Yeah.
Just show up.
Yeah.
And that's 90% of everything right there. Just show up. Just be there. Just go. Just do it. Just do it.
It's
I guess
absolutely true. And especially too, like
yep.
it takes a lot of discipline to do things as well on your own as you would for your teacher, because when you actually show up to class, guaranteed you're not going to take the breaks that you would if you were on your own, like, I'm going to catch my breath for a second, I'm going to get a drink of water, I'm going to calm down before I do this next thing. Now, like when you're there in front of your Sifu, you just do it as they expect it. Next thing, drop your stances low, everything strong. So yeah, by showing up, just by virtue of that, yeah, that's huge.
Awesome answer. Consistency. All right. Fourth question for you now, Sifu Kuttel. All right. If you could teach the new generation of martial artists only one thing, it could be a technique, it could be philosophy, or it could be a combination, what would it be?
Oh, it's so hard when it comes down to one thing. But what I would say is, I want to keep this directly related to the martial arts. And I would say, hip position. I think this is something, it goes back to the very first thing I was talking about that kind of makes Choy Li Fut unique when in power generation. And it doesn't have to be unique to Choy Li Fut. This could be something that you can apply in any martial art, in standing arts, in striking arts, standing arts, in throwing arts, in grappling arts. Hip position is so key. Power generation and positioning and just being able to throw the perfect technique, it all comes down to your hip position. So no matter what art you're training, pay attention to where your hip is and how you are using it to throw your punch, to align your kick, and to really make it solid. Or when you throw that person over, you're bumping them with that hip. When you're on the ground, it's you're always trying to move the hip, trying to use it to sneak in or out of the position. Hip position is key. And I know it's like, again, it's a really quick, simple answer, but to me, I think it's, as for martial artists, it's important. You need to be in control of every part of your body, at all times. You kind of have to be aware of all of that. And one of the best places you can start is right there at the hip. So that's my big advice.
That is a great answer. I completely agree with that answer. People don't realize how important the hip is, right? It's as if people take the hip for granted until, right, they injure their hip and they realize they can't stand, they realize they can't walk, they have no type of stability at all. So then they're like, oh, okay, the hip is very important. Right. So I agree with your answer. Very good. Very good. Very good, sir. So I got one more very important question for you. It's for me, but for everybody else who needs to get in contact with you, Sifu Kuttel, how do they do that?
Well, the best way actually is just to start at my website, because I have pretty much all the links to everything else from there. It's www.sifukuttel.com, and Kuttel is spelled Kuttel. And from there, you can find me even just searching on YouTube, Sifu Kuttel. You pull up my Kung Fu page. I have a separate Tai Chi page as well. I have Instagram, Sifu Brian Kuttel. And then I'm on and off on Twitter. So if you try to find me over there, you have to be a little bit patient. And then, of course, on Facebook, you'll find me as well. But if you look up Sifu Kuttel, you'll be able to find me.
All right. That's good. That's good. Information for Sifu Kuttel will be in the description down below. Also in the description down below will be a link for FeiYue shoes. If you need FeiYue shoes, go ahead and click that link down below. Get the best prices, the best deals, all at FeiYue shoes. Sifu Kuttel, I want to thank you very much for the time that you've taken to speak with me, sir. You have enlightened me in many ways on Choy Li Fut. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. This has been an honor. I really enjoy this.
All right, Sifu Kuttel.